My name is Leo Vance, a healer without a license. At this moment, I'm being kicked around by three beefy thugs next to a dumpster in a back alley, cold rain mixing with the taste of blood in my mouth. $5 million! The leader, a man with a jagged scar across his face, snarled, grinding his boot into the back of my hand. You don't have it. We pulled the plug on your mother. Just when I thought they were going to kill me, three Rolls Royces glided to a stop at the mouth of the alley. An old butler in white gloves paid off my debt, then handed me a tablet. On the screen was a woman with a face carved from ice, a CEO, and a contract. It offered me a position as her live-in husband, tasked with the 24/7 care of her son. The payment, my mother's life. My name is Leo Vance. I'm 29 years old, a healer without a license. Right now, three brutes are using me as a soccer ball next to a pile of garbage in an Ethelbert back alley. The icy rain tastes like blood. Don't play dead, Vance. Scarface hissed, twisting his heel on my knuckles. $5 million. If you don't have it by today, we're going to visit your old lady in the ICU and pull her oxygen tube. Half my face was pressed against the wet concrete, my wire-rimmed glasses shattered and hanging crookedly from my nose. A bitter laugh caught in my throat. The Vance lineage, a 1,000-year tradition of healers. My family possessed the unique art of diagnosing life and death through the sound of a person's voice and could snatch souls back from the devil's grip with a set of silver needles. And here I was, the last of the line, being threatened by a couple of low-life thugs using my mother's life as leverage. My ancestors were probably spinning in their graves. $5 million. I remembered a time when a simple wellness prescription I wrote for some wealthy socialite would fetch more than that. But times had changed. My family challenged the authority of the pharmaceutical titan, Langley Pharma. They orchestrated our downfall, branding us as charlatans practicing illegal, pseudoscientific medicine. Our licenses were revoked, and we were buried under a mountain of debt from a trumped-up malpractice suit. This is how heroes fall. Just as I resigned myself to being beaten to death, the shriek of tires tore through the downpour. A convoy of three black Rolls-Royce Phantoms, like silent steel behemoths, came to a halt. Their headlights cut through the alley's darkness like twin swords, illuminating us ants scrambling by the trash. The three collectors froze, their faces a mixture of confusion and fear. The rear door of the center car opened. An elderly man in a flawless tuxedo and white gloves, his silver hair combed perfectly, stepped out holding a massive black umbrella. He walked toward us, his steps steady and dignified, navigating the filthy puddles as if he were strolling across the red carpets of his own estate. His elegance was entirely out of place. "Gentlemen," the butler began, his voice calm, but carrying an authority that could not be questioned. "My employer wishes to discuss a business proposition with Mr. Vance. As for your debt, she has already settled it. Now, please disappear." Behind him, two bodyguards in black suits and sunglasses stepped forward. One of them snapped open a briefcase, revealing stacks of crisp, red-banded $100 bills. Scarface's eyes nearly bulged out of their sockets. 3 seconds later, he and his cronies were scrambling away down the other end of the alley, running for their lives. Finally, silence. The old butler angled the enormous umbrella over me, shielding me from the rain. He pulled a pristine white handkerchief from his coat and offered it to me, followed by a rugged, military-grade tablet. The screen lit up, revealing the flawlessly beautiful face of a woman. She was ethereally stunning, but as cold as ancient ice. Below her image was a digital contract with clauses so detailed they were pathological. The video call connected. Her voice, as frigid as her expression, came through the speakers. Leo Vance, former heir to the Vance apothecary tradition. License revoked for illegal practice, currently $5 million in debt. Mother, critically ill. Out of my research, you were once the top pediatric neurological specialist in the country. I'm offering you a choice. I wiped the blood from my face with a handkerchief, my eyes fixed on the contract. Party B, Leo Vance, shall marry into the Frost family as the contract husband of Party A, Serafina Frost. Party B is required to provide 24-hour care for Party A's son, Orion Frost, until his affective agnosia is unilaterally deemed cured by Party A. During the contract period, Party B's total daily speaking duration must be maintained between 4 to 6 hours, with an average vocal pitch between C4 and G4 to ensure optimal sonic therapy for Orion Frost. Party B is forbidden from engaging in non-essential conversation exceeding 60 seconds with any female other than Party A and her staff. Violations will result in a penalty of $100,000 per second. My eyes twitched. Was this an employment contract? This was an indenture agreement. No, it was more advanced than that. I was being hired as a human, voice-activated audio player with built-in nanny functions and a social castration clause. My gaze drifted to the end of the contract, to the compensation section. It listed a sum with more zeros than I had ever seen in my life, and an additional clause. Party A will assume responsibility for all of Party B's debts and provide his mother with the best medical resources available globally. A grim smile touched my lips. Did I have a choice? No, this was a deal with the devil, but it was also my only salvation. With a trembling finger, I signed my name on the screen. Fine. For my mother, I'd be a human MP3 player. Hell, I'd be a broken record. As of today, I, Leo Vance, was officially on the clock. Profession, contract husband and nanny. Also, human musical instrument. The estate they brought me to wasn't a home. It was a fortress of ice. Ethelgard Estate, sprawling over hundreds of acres. Its design was minimalist to the point of being cruel. As far as the eye could see, there were only 3 colors, black, white, and gray. Even the leaves on the trees seemed to be a restrained, disciplined shade of green. The first order of business upon entering was a decontamination process rivaling that of a BSL-4 lab. 2 bodyguards escorted me into a stark white room where I was sprayed with an unknown disinfectant and ordered to strip. My worn-out shirt and pants, bargains I'd worn for 3 years, along with my underwear and socks, were picked up with tongs by a person in a hazmat suit, tossed into a biohazard bag, sealed, and incinerated. My only thought was, do I have some kind of supervirus on me? Is all this really necessary? Next, a new set of clothes was brought in. From the underwear to the outerwear, they were all brands I didn't recognize but which screamed exorbitant, with the style and color predetermined. After I changed, my phone, wallet, keys, all my personal belongings were confiscated. In their place, I was given a specially designed phone capable of contacting only the butler and the Ice Queen CEO. Mr. Vance, welcome to Ethelgard Estate. The old butler, a man named Abernathy, said with the same meticulous demeanor. He handed me a thick, black, gold-leaf manual. These are the rules of the estate. Please be sure to memorize them. I took it and flipped it open. My God, it was a dense 365-rule tome, thicker than the criminal code. Rule number 1. Emitting any noise exceeding 80 decibels within the estate is prohibited. Rule number 37. Wake up at 6 a.m. daily. At 6:30 a.m., prepare breakfast for Master Orion. Ingredients must be measured to the exact gram. Rule number 182. After 10 p.m., you may not leave your room except in an emergency. I slowly closed the manual with one thought ringing in my head. Did I marry into wealth? Or did I just check myself into a high-security psych ward? What kind of control freak was this Serafina Frost to come up with such an inhuman set of rules? Mr. Vance, please follow me. I will take you to see Master Orion, Abernathy said, leading the way. We walked down a corridor that felt endlessly long, the thick wool carpet absorbing all sound. There are no paintings on the walls, only cold, geometric lines. I glanced up and spotted a discreet security camera in the corner of the ceiling. A few steps later, another one. I roughly estimated that I had passed at least 30 cameras since entering the main gate. This wasn't a home. It was a maximum security prison. And I was the new inmate. The door to the child's room swung open without a sound. It was an impossibly large room, big enough for a child to ride a bicycle in. But the color scheme was the same oppressive black, white, and gray. A thick, immaculate carpet covered the floor. Toys were arranged neatly in a corner like lifeless museum exhibits. A little boy of about 5 was sitting in the middle of the floor, silently building with blocks. He was as beautiful as a porcelain doll, his features so perfect he almost looked fake. His skin was translucently pale, his eyelashes long and curled. But his obsidian eyes were completely empty, devoid of any emotion. He was like a puppet without a soul. This was Orion Frost, my patient and my young employer. Master Orion, Abernathy called softly. The boy didn't react, as if he hadn't heard, his focus remaining on the blocks in his hands. I walked forward and knelt in front of him, trying to make my voice sound as gentle and harmless as possible. Hello, Orion. My name is Leo. From today on, I'm going to be here to play with you, okay? He still didn't look up, not even a flicker of his eyelids. His world was one of absolute silence. I sighed. This wasn't going to be easy. Affective agnosia, an extremely rare, hereditary neurological condition. Patients with it don't lack emotions. Rather, the neurons in the brain responsible for receiving and expressing them are in a dormant state, unable to be activated by conventional external stimuli. Their world has no sound, no color, no joy or sorrow. And my voice, according to Serafina Frost's research, happened to be the only key capable of temporarily awakening those dormant neurons. I looked up, my eyes precisely locating the faint red light blinking on the hidden camera in the corner. I knew that woman, Serafina Frost, was watching my every move from somewhere, observing me like a lab rat. I took a deep breath, cleared my mind, and began my work. I didn't try to speak to him again. Instead, I sat down nearby, picked up a few blocks myself, and began to build slowly and rhythmically, mirroring his actions. I made no sound, using only my movements to tell him, "I'm here. I won't bother you. I'm just keeping you company." Time ticked by. The room was so quiet that only the sound of our breathing could be heard. I don't know how long it had been when I felt a gaze fall upon me. I didn't look up, keeping my focus on the blocks in my hand. But in my peripheral vision, I saw him. The little boy who had been completely absorbed in his own world had, for the first time, lifted his vacant gaze from his blocks and directed it toward me. It was only for a second, but he had definitely looked at me. At that moment, in the surveillance room on the top floor of the main house, Serafina Frost's hand, holding a coffee cup, paused imperceptibly. The next morning, I witnessed the full extent of the Frost fortune. Next to the child's room was a dedicated medical wing, filled with equipment more advanced than that of the city's top hospital. A team of foreign medical experts with blonde hair and blue eyes was gathered around Orion, running tests with various instruments. They spoke in technical jargon I could barely understand, but their conclusions were strikingly uniform. They were helpless. Ms. Frost, Master Orion's brain activity remains at an extremely low level, the white-bearded man in the lead said, speaking to the air. I knew he was addressing the hidden microphone. We suggest attempting a new, highly potent neurostimulant drug. It might activate his emotional centers. However, the old man's tone shifted. The side effects of this drug are severe and could cause irreversible damage to his nervous system. I stood to the side, frowning. These Western doctors, their only solutions were drugs or surgery. Crude, simplistic, and without any finesse. In the control room, Serafina stared at the screen showing her son's pale face, her lips pressed into a thin line. She didn't speak. Her nails were digging deep in her palms. Just then I walked over. "Good morning, esteemed experts," I said with a smile, in fluent English. "I am Leo Vance, Master Orion's new private physician. With all due respect, your proposed solution only treats the symptoms, not the root cause." All eyes turned to me, filled with scrutiny and disdain. The white-bearded man pushed up his glasses. "Young man, we are a top-tier team of specialists from Harvard Medical School. And where did you graduate from?" I maintained my smile. "You probably never heard of my school." The Vance apothecary. Ignoring their stunned expressions, I walked straight to Orion, knelt down, and placed 2 fingers gently on his wrist. Observation, auscultation, interrogation, and palpation. This was the art passed down through my family for 1,000 years. A few seconds later, I looked up and said calmly, "Master Orion's condition does not originate in the cerebral cortex. It stems from a systemic disharmony, a malnourishment of the core spirit. In my tradition, we understand that vitality, spirit, intention, and will are all rooted in a balanced internal system. When that system is in discord, the spirit is thrown into chaos. That is the root of the problem." "Nonsense. That's pseudoscience," the white-bearded man sputtered, his face red with anger. I didn't argue. I simply looked at Orion and continued. "In the last 2 weeks, Master Orion has had 3 minor skin allergies, occurring after he consumed mango, deep-sea fish, and nuts, respectively. During his sleep at night, around 1 and 3 a.m., he experiences slight muscle spasms, and his respiratory rate momentarily changes. Am I correct?" After I finished speaking, the entire medical wing fell silent. Because these details were things that even their most sophisticated life sign monitoring equipment had failed to fully record and analyze. And I had stated them accurately and without error after only a few seconds of taking his pulse. In the control room, Serafina Frost looked at the confident, professional man on the screen, then at the thick but useless report from her team of experts. For the first time, a flicker of something called surprise appeared in her dark, icy eyes. She spoke in the microphone, her voice cold and decisive. "All of you out, listen to him." I successfully dismissed the team of expensive foreign specialists. My last words to them were, "Saving a life isn't about which famous school you graduated from. It's about whether you have the heart to see your patient as a human being." I don't know if they understood, but they all looked as if they had swallowed a fly. I didn't immediately give Orion any medication. nor did I use any of my family's legendary acupuncture techniques. When dealing with a 5-year-old child, especially one whose spirit is malnourished, the key is to nurture, not to treat. I walked into the estate's kitchen, which was more extravagant than that of a 5-star hotel. From a vast array of top-tier ingredients, I selected only a few of the most common: millet, yam, and dates. Then, from the small medicine kit I had brought with me, I picked out a few gentle herbs known for their calming properties. I personally prepared a fragrant and soothing restorative broth for Orion. The entire time, Abernathy stood to the side, watching silently. A hint of curiosity flickered in his usually stoic eyes. I carried the bowl back to the child's room. Orion was still sitting on the carpet, oblivious to my return. I placed a small table in front of him, set down the bowl, and then sat cross-legged opposite him. I didn't rush to feed him. Instead, I took out an old thread-bound book from my family's collection, the Vance Codex of Vitality. I opened it to a chapter and began to read aloud in my most gentle, resonant voice. Therefore, the sage does not treat those who are already ill, but rather those who are not yet ill. He does not govern that which is already in disorder, but that which is not yet in disorder. To administer medicine only after a disease has formed, to impose order only after chaos has erupted, is it not like digging a well only when one is thirsty, or forging weapons only after the battle has begun? Is it not already too late? My voice, enhanced by a unique Vance family technique, carried a special frequency capable of calming the mind and stabilizing emotions. It was the reverse application of our diagnostic art, using sound to nurture the spirit. After reading for a while, I picked up the bowl, scooped a small spoonful of the broth, blew on it to cool it, and held it to Orion's lips. He didn't open his mouth. I wasn't anxious. I continued to read from a book, holding the spoon steady. 1 minute, 2 minutes. Just when I thought he would refuse indefinitely, his long eyelashes fluttered. Then, he slightly parted his lips. A surge of joy went through me. I quickly and carefully slipped the small spoonful of broth into his mouth. He chewed silently, then swallowed. No resistance, no rejection. In the control room, Serafina watched this harmonious scene on the screen. Watching her son accept food from a stranger for the first time without a fight, her tightly clenched fist slowly relaxed. That day, it took me an hour, half a chapter of the Codex, and an entire bowl of broth. I grumbled internally. Another day of being a human audio player for a capitalist. But the results were promising. To treat an illness of the heart, you need warmth. This cold house, this cold mother. It was a wonder the child had any feelings at all. Today, I would warm his stomach. Then, slowly, I would warm his heart. During my first week at Ethelgard Estate, I lived a life more regimented than a robot's. I woke up at 6 a.m. sharp to prepare a medicinal breakfast for the little master. In the mornings, I played quiet games with him like building blocks and drawing. In the afternoons, I read to him, providing him with sonic therapy using my voice. In the evenings, I brewed him a calming herbal soup and put him to sleep. My movements were strictly confined to a 3-point circuit: the child's room, the kitchen, and my bedroom. As for the CEO, Serafina Frost, I hadn't seen her in person once. She was like a ghost, a remote supervisor, monitoring my every move through the 1,000+ high-definition cameras scattered throughout the estate. I even suspected she was watching when I went to the bathroom. This feeling of being watched 24/7 was deeply unsettling, but for my mother's medical bills, I endured it. My only form of entertainment was to complain endlessly in my head. The little master looked at me for an extra second today. I'm rewarding myself with an extra bowl of rice. This she-devil even dictates the style of cup I drink water from. Was she a ruler in a past life? I'm supposed to be a live-in husband. So how come I never even see my wife? This is false advertising. I'm going to file a complaint with the Better Business Bureau. One night, just as I was about to sleep, a shrill alarm blared from the adjacent child's room, followed by Orion's terrified screams. My heart sank. I shot out of bed and rushed over. When I pushed open the door, I saw Orion lying in bed, his body cold and trembling violently, as if trapped in a horrifying nightmare. And standing by the bed was a woman in a black silk nightgown. It was Serafina Frost. This was the first time I'd seen her in person. She was even more beautiful than on screen, and even colder. Her waist-long black hair was draped loosely over her shoulders, making her pale face seem even more so. She just stood there, watching her son struggle in agony, her eyes filled with a mixture of helplessness and heartache, but she was powerless to do anything. No form of comfort worked on him. A night terror, an overabundance of heart fire, a deficiency of kidney water, a classic imbalance. I made an instant diagnosis. I had no time to ask for her permission. I rushed forward and expertly scooped the thrashing Orion into my arms. I placed my palm on his back, directly over the meridian point that governs the spirit. Then, using a special rhythmic breathing technique, I regulated my own energy while humming a soothing lullaby that had been passed down through my family for generations. The melody was simple and ancient, yet it seemed to possess a kind of magic. Orion's screams gradually subsided, and his violent trembling slowly eased. Like a frightened kitten, he found a safe harbor in my arms and grew quiet. Serafina watched this unfold, a complex expression in her eyes. Although Orion had calmed down, he wasn't asleep. One small hand was clenched tightly around my collar, as if holding onto a lifeline. His other hand, however, shot out and gripped the hem of Serafina's nightgown, refusing to let go. The situation became awkward. I was holding the child, and the child was holding his mother. The three of us were locked in a strange, unbreakable triangle. Ms. Frost. I broke the silence, trying to keep my tone professional. It seems the child needs both parents present to feel secure enough. Serafina's face was so cold, it could have caused frostbite. She tried to pull away, but the moment she moved, Orion's body began to tremble again, and a distressed whimper escaped his throat. She was forced to remain frozen in place. Seeing her predicament, furious but unable to act, almost laughed out loud. Serves you right for watching me on your cameras all day. Now you've got a front row, VIP seat to the live show, and attendance is mandatory. Time crawled by. I sat on the soft carpet, holding the child. Serafina, forced to compromise her dignity, sat on the edge of the bed. No one dared to move, and no one spoke. A strange, palpable tension filled the air. To break the awkwardness, I began to softly tell Orion a story. Once upon a time, on a mountain far away, there was a temple. My voice echoed in the quiet room. In my arms, Orion's eyes slowly closed, and his breathing became even. He was asleep, but his two small hands still held onto us tightly, showing no sign of letting go. I tried to shift my position slightly, and he immediately frowned. Well, that settled it. Neither of us was going anywhere tonight. The night passed just like that. I held the boy in the same position until my arm was completely numb. Serafina also remained on the edge of the bed. Her legs must have been stiff as boards. The next morning, when Abernathy pushed the door open to deliver breakfast, he was greeted by a surprisingly domestic scene. I was leaning against the headboard, the sleeping boy nestled in my arms, and the formidable CEO was slumped against the other side of the bed, also fast asleep. Sunlight streamed in through the window, bathing the three of us in a golden glow. Abernathy froze for a second. Then, a knowing, almost triumphant smile broke through his perpetually stoic expression. He backed out of the room silently, gently closing the door behind him. I looked at the sleeping Serafina beside me. With all her icy defenses down, her long eyelashes cast soft shadows in the morning light. She looked as peaceful as a child. I suddenly realized that this she-devil wasn't so terrible after all. After our shared ordeal, the dynamic between Serafina and me underwent a subtle shift. She no longer observed me solely through cameras. Occasionally, she would appear at the door of the child's room while I was treating Orion, standing at a distance, just watching. She was still silent, still wearing her icy mask, but I could feel that her gaze held less scrutiny and more of something I couldn't quite name. Under my care, Orion's condition improved day by day. He was no longer completely lost in his own world. Sometimes his eyes would follow me as I moved around the room. When I fed him, he would open his mouth willingly. When I told him stories, his pupils would dilate and track. To Serafina, these small signs of progress were more thrilling than closing a billion-dollar deal. One afternoon, the weather was beautiful. I took Orion to the estate's enormous glass conservatory. It was the only place on the entire property that was bursting with color. Sunlight poured through the glass dome, warm and inviting. I held Orion's small hand, teaching him to identify the different plants. Look, Orion, this is a rose. It has thorns, but it's very beautiful. This one is a sunflower. It always smiles at the sun. And this is mint. It smells cool and refreshing. I plucked a mint leaf, gently bruised it between my fingers, and held it up to his nose. Orion leaned down, his small nose twitching as he took in the scent. Then he looked up. For the first time, his perpetually vacant eyes seemed to find a clear focus. He looked at me, his mouth working, as if learning a completely new and difficult movement. Finally, a single, muffled but absolutely discernible syllable escaped his small throat. "Oh!" In that instant, I froze. I thought I had imagined it. I stared at him, my heart hammering against my ribs. And at that very moment, in the control room on the top floor of the main house, Serafina, who was leisurely watching the screen while sipping a pour-over coffee, heard that sound, like a note from heaven, coming through the high-fidelity speakers. Crash! The bone china coffee cup, handcrafted by the British royal family's personal artisan and worth 6 figures, slipped from her hand and shattered on the polished marble floor. Brown liquid splattered across the hem of her expensive, custom-made white suit skirt. But she didn't even notice. The next second, the sound of frantic heels echoed through the control room. Serafina burst out of her top-floor office as if possessed. She didn't even wait for the elevator, shoving open the door to the emergency stairwell and flying down the steps in her 4-inch heels. She ran so fast that she stumbled at a landing, twisting her ankle sharply. A searing pain shot through her, but she barely winced, not even pausing as she continued to limp desperately toward the conservatory. Bang! She threw open the glass doors with violent force. Startled by the noise, I turned to see a disheveled Serafina. Her hair was a mess, her face was deathly pale, and she was panting heavily. Her eyes, usually as cold and dark as ink, were now burning with a feverish, red-hot flame. She rushed toward us, no, toward Orion. She dropped to her knees, her hands gripping his small shoulders, her voice trembling with violent emotion. "Orion, you, say it again. Say it again for Mommy." She was too emotional, her grip too tight. Orion was terrified by this sudden, overwhelming display. His small body flinched. He instinctively turned and buried himself in my arms, clinging to my leg and hiding his face like a small animal seeking refuge. That unconscious act was a knife, and it plunged directly into Serafina Frost's heart. Seeing her son's retreat and his reliance on me, the last trace of color drained from Serafina's face. In that moment, all her strength, all her carefully constructed armor, shattered. For the past 5 years, she had single-handedly supported the vast Frost Industries, facing down the scheming board members and the relentless attacks of business rivals without flinching. For the past 5 years, she had raised her autistic son alone, traveling the world to see the best doctors, facing disappointment after disappointment without ever shedding a tear. But today, in the very instant that a flicker of hope was ignited, she was utterly crushed by her own son's instinctive reaction. All the grief, pain, bitterness, and self-blame she had suppressed for 5 long years burst forth like a breaking dam. She collapsed to the ground, no longer caring about her image as a powerful CEO. She covered her face with her hands and let out a choked, wounded sound, like a cornered animal. Tears streamed through her fingers, soaking the front of her expensive suit. I looked at this woman, usually so imperious, so cold and untouchable, now as vulnerable as a lost child, and my heart softened unexpectedly. I sighed, gently handing the frightened Orion, who was still clinging to my leg, to a nearby, stunned maid. Then I walked to Serafina's side and knelt beside her. I reached out, a bit awkwardly, and gently patted her trembling back. "It's okay, Ms. Frost. This is a good thing." My voice was soft, gentle. "Orion has taken the first step. Everything is going to get better. You're a good mother. You really are." The moment my hand touched her back, her entire body went rigid. I could feel her instinctive urge to pull away. For the past 5 years, besides her son, it was likely that no man had dared to touch her so freely. But for some reason, she didn't move. The warmth from my palm, carrying the faint scent of herbs, and the pure gentleness in my voice, seemed to have a strange, calming power that disarmed her completely. She didn't push me away. Instead, she cried even harder, her suppressed sobs turning into unrestrained weeping. I didn't say anything more. I just kept my hand on her back, patting it gently and rhythmically, as if I were comforting Orion, as if I were comforting her. Beneath her icy exterior was a heart that had been shattered long ago. And in that moment, a man bound to her by contract, a mere tool, had become the only sanctuary she could lean on. Serafina cried for a long time that day. Only when she was completely exhausted did her emotions finally settle. I helped her up and walked her back to her bedroom in the main house. She didn't say a word the entire time, simply accepting my support. From that day forward, the terms of our contract seemed to have been invisibly amended. I was no longer just Orion's human audio player and high-end nanny. Occasionally, when Serafina returned to the estate late at night, exhausted from work, she would find a bowl of warm, calming soup waiting for her on the dining table. When her chronic stomach pain flared up, the menu delivered by her personal nutritionist the next day would include a few medicinal dishes I had personally designed. When she suffered from insomnia due to corporate troubles, a small sachet filled with a custom blend of sleep-aiding herbs I prepared would mysteriously appear in her bedroom. I did all of this quietly, never seeking credit. My position was still that of a contract husband, an employee, and she never offered thanks. She remained the Ice Queen CEO, ordering me around with the same imperious tone. Leo, this soup is too salty today. Leo, who gave you permission to change my menu? Leo, I don't like the smell of this sachet. Each time, I would simply nod with a smile. Of course, Ms. Frost. I'll be more careful next time. But I knew. The soup she called too salty, she drank to the last drop. The medicinal menu she questioned, she followed without fail for a month. The sachet, she claimed, smelled unpleasant. She kept hanging by her bed, never taking it down. This woman was a master of duplicity. Her words were sharp and pragmatic, but her actions were honest. And I was content to play along with her act. After all, she was the one signing my paychecks. We were like two top-tier actors who had an unspoken understanding, maintaining a delicate balance. Until his appearance shattered everything. The most exclusive business gala of the year was being held at a 7-star hotel on the Ethelberg waterfront. As the contract husband of the CEO of Frost Industries, I, Leo Vance, had the honor of attending as her model spouse. I wore a high-end, custom-tailored white suit, my hair perfectly styled, a gentle, cultured smile fixed on my face as Serafina held my arm. To outsiders, we were the perfect couple. Several business tycoons came over to greet Serafina, their eyes turning to me with envy. Ms. Frost, you're a lucky woman. Such a young, handsome, and accomplished husband. I smiled and nodded, all the while screaming internally, Buddy, you have no idea. I'm just an employee. Lucky. My biggest luck is getting off work on time, so I can go home and tell my son, oh wait, my boss's son, a bedtime story. Halfway through the gala, the lights suddenly dimmed. A single spotlight hit the entrance of the ballroom. A man walked in amidst a wave of gasps. He was tall and well-built, dressed in a perfectly tailored Armani suit. His features were sharp and handsome, almost aggressively so. He carried himself with the innate confidence and dominance of a man born to rule. It's Julian Thorne. Julian Thorne of Apex Capital. He's actually back. My God, he's even more magnetic than he was 5 years ago. Beside me, Serafina's body went rigid the moment she saw him. Her hand on my arm tightened unconsciously. I could feel her breathing become erratic. A cold knot of dread formed in my stomach. Julian Thorne, heir to the Thorne Financial Empire of North America, CEO of Apex Capital's Asian division, and Serafina Frost's ex-boyfriend. Or rather, Orion's biological father. I had deduced this information while treating Orion based on subtle physiological traits and certain genetic markers. I just never expected the man himself to return at this moment, in such a high-profile manner. Julian walked onto the stage and took the microphone. His gaze cut across the entire ballroom, burning and unabashed, and landed squarely on Serafina. Good evening, everyone. His voice was magnetic, filled with an unshakable authority. I, Julian Thorne, am back. I have returned not just for business, but to right a wrong I committed 5 years ago. To win back the most important person in my life. The hall erupted. Every head in the room swiveled toward us like searchlights. I could feel the hand clutching my arm begin to tremble. I turned to look at her face, which had gone deathly pale from shock and anger. For the first time in those cold, dark eyes, I saw a flicker of panic. Gently, I covered her cold hand with my other one and gave her a reassuring smile. Whoever you were in the past, right now, for the duration of this contract, you're my boss. And I've got your back. Today, I, Leo Vance, a humble working man, was about to go head-to-head with a so-called titan of capital. Julian Thorne's aggressive return was like a bombshell dropped on Ethelberg's high society. Speculation about his past relationship with Serafina and the truth of Orion's parentage became the talk of the town. Within Frost Industries, a dark tide began to stir. VP Evans, who had long coveted the CEO position, immediately started cozying up to Julian like a shark smelling blood. The two colluded, planning to use this scandal to drag Serafina down. Suddenly, she was under attack from all sides. But she was Serafina Frost, the queen who was decisive and ruthless in the world of business. She quickly regained her composure and began to calmly handle the mounting pressure. I noticed, however, that she was returning to the estate later and later, the exhaustion on her face growing heavier. She spent more and more time alone in the control room. Julian, after his public declaration of love failed, resorted to a more direct and brutal approach. He bypassed the estate's multi-layered security system and forced his way in. That afternoon, I was reading to Orion from a book of Greek myths when Abernathy knocked on the door, his expression grim. He said, "Miss, Frost requested my presence with the young master in the main sitting room." Holding Orion's hand, I walked into the vast, cold room, and my eyes immediately fell on the man sitting on the sofa, radiating power. Julian Thorne. Beside him stood two arrogant-looking lawyers. Serafina sat in the main chair, her expression frozen. "Serafina, stop lying to yourself." Julian stood up as we entered and slapped a file down on the table in front of her. It was a legally binding DNA report. The cover page featured a photograph of a 5-year younger Julian, holding a newborn baby with a look of pure joy. The background was a hospital delivery room. The baby's features bore a 7 or 8/10 resemblance to Orion. "Orion is our son." Julian's voice was firm and resonant. "Back then, my family wronged you. They forced me to leave. Now I'm back, and I have the power and the responsibility to give you and our child the best of everything." His gaze shifted to me, filled with undisguised contempt. "Get rid of this no-name doctor who crawled out of the woodwork. Serafina, come with me. We are a family." I stood frozen, listening to it all, staring at that damning DNA report. My mind went blank. Even though I had long suspected it, seeing the cold, hard truth laid out before me felt like being doused with a bucket of ice water. So, all this time, I wasn't a live-in husband or a contract spouse. I was just a temporary NPC in a massive real-life RPG, a glorified medic. Now that the main character was back, it was time for the temp to pack his bags and get lost. As I watched their family reunion about to happen, what was I? A well-paid placeholder? A wave of intense humiliation and self-mockery washed over me. My face must have been a sight to behold. The hand holding Orion's began to tremble uncontrollably. Julian didn't even spare me a glance. In his eyes, I was nothing more than a high-class nanny Serafina had hired, a clown who could be dismissed with a wave of cash. He walked around me, a self-satisfied, fatherly smile on his face, and opened his arms to Orion. "Orion, come here. Come to Daddy. I'm your father." His voice was gentle, but the possessiveness and aggression in his eyes were unmistakable. Orion, who had been standing quietly beside me, reacted in a way that no one could have predicted. For the first time, an extremely powerful emotion erupted from his vacant eyes. It wasn't curiosity or affection. It was terror, a deep, bone-chilling fear, as if he were seeing the most horrifying monster imaginable. He violently tore himself away from me, letting out a shrill, terrified scream. His small body trembled violently, his eyes filled with hostility and defiance. He grabbed a crystal paperweight from the coffee table and, with all his might, hurled it at Julian Thorne. Crash! The paperweight hit Julian's expensive leather shoe and shattered on the floor. Julian was stunned by the sudden turn of events, a flash of shock and anger crossing his handsome face. He, the heir to Apex Capital, had just been attacked by his own son. Just as he was about to lose his temper, I darted forward and pulled the hysterical Orion into a tight embrace. "It's okay, you're safe. I'm here." I gently patted his back, soothing him in the way that was most familiar to us. Miraculously, the moment he was in my arms, Orion's piercing screams stopped. He was like a small boat that had found a safe harbor, instantly quieting down. But he continued to glare at Julian with eyes full of hatred and fear. His one uninjured hand clutched my shirt with all its strength, as if he were using every ounce of his being to declare to the world who he belonged to. For Julian Thorne, this was a stake through the heart. His own flesh and blood saw him as a monster, while a complete stranger was the child's only sanctuary. His face instantly turned darker than the bottom of a pot. Serafina watched the scene unfold, her expression incredibly complex. She looked at her terrified son, her furious ex-boyfriend, and the contract husband who held her child protectively. The long-rusted scales of justice in her heart began to sway violently for the first time. She knew that things had spiraled completely out of her control. After that disastrous confrontation, the atmosphere in the estate plunged back to freezing, and I, Leo Vance, retreated completely into the shell of a doctor and an employee. I no longer engaged in any affectionate interactions with Orion, like holding his hand or hugging him. I simply performed my duties mechanically and professionally, preparing his medicinal meals, monitoring his vitals, and providing him with sonic therapy. I was even more distant with Serafina. When I spoke to her, I always used ma'am and Ms. Frost, my words and actions creating an uncrossable chasm between a subordinate and his superior. My heart felt as if it were encased in a thick layer of ice. I told myself over and over, Leo, don't forget your place. You're just a tool hired to do a job. Other people's family drama has nothing to do with you. When the contract is up, take the money, go treat your mother, and avenge your family. That's what matters. Serafina clearly noticed the change in me. The entire estate, because of my self-imposed isolation, became as quiet, oppressive, and lifeless as it had been before I arrived. In the control room, she stared at the screen, at the man who was polite and impeccable, but who had lost his former gentle smile. For the first time, she felt something akin to panic. She realized she had grown accustomed to hearing his warm voice reading stories to her son every day, accustomed to the comforting bowl of soup on the table when she returned home, exhausted, late at night, accustomed to being able to let down her guard just a little when he was around. But now, all of that had vanished with Julian Thorne's return. She was not happy at all. Meanwhile, the external pressure mounted. Thwarted in his appeal to fatherhood, Julian began to attack Frost Industries on the business front. He teamed up with VP Evans and several old guard board members who had long been dissatisfied with Serafina, citing that Serafina Frost's status as an unwed mother and her chaotic private life have seriously damaged the corporate image, making her unfit to lead Frost Industries. They instigated a move to convene an emergency shareholder meeting to impeach her. Suddenly, Serafina was trapped between a rock and a hard place. Although I appeared indifferent on the surface, I couldn't truly remain uninvolved. After all, if Serafina fell, who would pay for my mother's medical bills and my $5 million debt? Professionally and personally, I couldn't let her fail. I picked up the special phone I had been neglecting, the one that could only contact Abernathy and Serafina, and dialed the number I had never called before. Hello, Ms. Frost? It's Leo Vance, regarding VP Evans and Julian Thorne. Perhaps I can be of some assistance. The tension in the Frost Industries boardroom was thick enough to cut with a knife. Around the long, oval conference table sat the company's directors and shareholders, every one of them with a grim expression. VP Evans sat opposite Serafina, a smug, triumphant smirk on his face. Beside him sat Julian Thorne's representative, a high-powered lawyer. Ms. Frost, we didn't call this emergency meeting to target you personally. Evans began with feigned sincerity. This is for the future of Frost Industries. The CEO represents the company's image. The fact that you have a child out of wedlock, with the father's identity unknown, has caused widespread speculation. Our stock has been falling for 3 straight days. That's correct, Julian's lawyer added, pushing up his glasses. Furthermore, we understand that you currently have an unknown man living in your home under the guise of a husband. This is treating the company's reputation like a joke. We have serious doubts about whether your personal situation allows you to continue to competently serve as CEO. Their back and forth was perfectly synchronized. A few directors who had already been bought off chimed in with their support. Serafina sat at the head of the table, listening to their accusations with a blank expression. Underneath the table, her hands were clenched into tight fists, just as she felt she couldn't hold on any longer, ready to play her final hand and go down fighting. Her personal phone on the table vibrated softly. It was an anonymous email. She nonchalantly opened it. After reading just one line, a sharp, dangerous light flashed in her cold, dark eyes. The email contained several detailed intelligence reports. One was a thorough analysis of the $10 billion investment project Julian Thorne had brought with him on his return. The report precisely identified a financial trap within the project. Any rival company that fell into it would be financially ruined. And VP Evans was just about to push a Frost Industries subsidiary into that very pit. Another report was a complete chain of evidence detailing how Evans had used his position over the past 3 years to secretly transfer company assets overseas, documented down to the time, amount, and account number of every single transaction. The level of detail and accuracy in these files was something even her own top-tier corporate intelligence department would have to admire. The sender was anonymous, but the image of a man in a white shirt and wire-rimmed glasses, who always appeared gentle and harmless, immediately popped into Serafina's mind. So, he was far more than just a doctor. Serafina looked up, a cold, mocking smile playing on her lips. She connected her phone to the boardroom projector and said coolly, "Distinguished directors, before we discuss my private life, perhaps we should look at something a bit more interesting." The 2 intelligence reports filled the massive screen. When he saw the detailed data and transaction records, the triumphant smile on Evan's face froze. Beads of sweat began to pop out on his forehead, and his face went deathly pale. This is slander. It's fabricated, he roared in a panic. Serafina sneered. Fabricated or not, I believe the company's legal department and the financial crimes unit will give us an impartial answer. She then turned her gaze to Julian's lawyer, her eyes as sharp as daggers. As for Mr. Thorne's generous offer, we at Frost Industries appreciate the sentiment. However, our company doesn't engage in losing ventures, much less walk into traps set by others. You can keep your $10 billion project for someone else. The entire boardroom fell silent. The tables had been turned. In the end, Evans was taken away for investigation on the spot, and the few directors who had supported him were too scared to utter another word. A carefully orchestrated impeachment attempt was effortlessly dismantled by Serafina. After the meeting, Serafina immediately had her tech team trace the source of the anonymous email. The trail led to a small, unassuming clinic in a rundown part of Ethelberg. The owner was a man named Milo Kowalski, nicknamed Wrench. He was Leo Vance's best and only friend. The two had grown up together. Serafina sat alone in the empty conference room, staring at the results of the investigation, silent for a long time. It was only then that she began to realize just what kind of man she had bought with a simple contract. How many other secrets and abilities were hidden beneath his gentle, scholarly exterior. The Vance lineage of healers. This reclusive family, which had once shone brightly in the world of medicine before quickly fading away, was clearly not as simple as it seemed. Her interest, or rather, her curiosity, about Leo Vance had now reached an unprecedented peak. I saw the news of VP Evans' arrest on the evening financial report. The once powerful executive was now, in handcuffs, being escorted by 2 police officers, looking defeated and pathetic. I knew Serafina's crisis was over, at least for now. And Orion's condition, under my care, had largely stabilized. He could now speak simple words intermittently like water, food, and want. His pronunciation was still off, but it was a medical miracle nonetheless. My mission, it seemed, was complete. I didn't want to remain a superfluous background character in the awkward and strange family drama of these 3 people. It was time to leave. I didn't sleep that night. I spent the entire night on my computer, writing a 50-page guide titled Orion Frost's Continued Recovery and Development. It covered everything from his dietary structure and required daily nutrients, down to the milligram, for the next 3 years, to seasonal allergy prevention, from psychological counseling through play, to reading lists for each stage of his development, from emergency response protocols for various situations, to the contact information of several renowned experts in child psychology. I wrote down every possible scenario I could think of. It was the last act of kindness I, as a doctor, could offer the child. After finishing the guide, I downloaded a standard employment contract termination agreement, printed it out, and signed my name on the employee line. I placed the 2 documents neatly on my desk. Then, I began to pack. There wasn't much to pack. I had arrived with a single, battered suitcase. I was leaving with the same one. Nothing in this estate belonged to me. I changed back into the clothes I had worn when I first came, though they had been washed and perfectly pressed. By the time I was done, the sky was beginning to lighten. I took one last look at the room I had lived in for months, a room more luxurious than a palace. Then, I quietly opened my door and walked to the entrance of the child's room. Through the crack in the door, I saw the still sleeping boy. He looked peaceful, a slight smile on his lips, as if he were having a pleasant dream. Goodbye, little guy. I turned, dragging my battered suitcase behind me, and walked toward the estate's main gate, one step at a time. I didn't look back. In the control room on the top floor, Serafina hadn't slept a wink. Through the screens, she watched Leo type out every single word of that 50-page guide. She watched him print out that glaring termination agreement and sign his name. She watched him neatly fold all the clothes that belonged to the estate and place them in the closet, then change back into his own cheap, old clothes. She watched him drag that battered suitcase, take one last look at her son's room, and then turn resolutely toward the main gate. He was leaving. The thought struck her like a bolt of lightning. A raw, panicked feeling, as if her heart were being physically carved out of her chest, seized her. She didn't even have time to think. Her body reacted before her mind could catch up. She shot up from her chair. Dressed in her silk nightgown, without even putting on slippers, she ran barefoot out of the office. Heels were too slow. Once again, she took the emergency stairs, sprinting down from the top floor. Her mind was a complete blank, possessed by a single thought. Don't let him leave. Absolutely do not let him leave. He is my son's medicine. He is Also mine. No one is taking him away from me. Leo, you stop right there. A woman's voice, trembling, breathless, almost a roar, shattered the morning calm of the estate. I had just reached the main gate, my hand on the handle, when the sound stopped me in my tracks. I turned around, and I saw Serafina. The eternally noble, composed, and meticulous O was now running barefoot on the cold flagstones, her nightgown in disarray, her hair flying wildly, sprinting toward me with absolute desperation. Her face was etched with a panic and distress I had never seen before. I was stunned. Serafina ran up to me, gasping for breath, and blocked my path. Without a word, she snatched the termination agreement from on top of my suitcase, and, with a series of sharp rips, tore it to shreds. The pieces of paper fluttered in the morning breeze. I stared at her, dumbfounded by her actions, unable to process what was happening. Ms. Frost, what are you? I just checked the astrological charts. She panted, spouting the most absurd nonsense. Mercury is in retrograde today. It's a bad day for everything, especially for terminating contracts. I was speechless. I took a deep breath, trying to remain calm and rational. Ms. Frost, we are both highly educated individuals. We should believe in science. I'm the boss, she interrupted, her logic completely despotic. What I believe in, my company believes in, and my estate believes in it too. My God, was this how capitalists operated? So unreasonable. Suppressing a laugh, I pulled another identical termination agreement from my pocket. Ms. Frost, I came prepared. This is a backup. Serafina's face darkened. She snatched the backup from my hand. This time, she didn't tear it. Instead, she pinched the paper between her delicate fingers, as if assessing its quality. Then she sneered. This is 20-pound paper. Too thin. It lacks substance and doesn't reflect the sanctity of our agreement. As per company policy, all important legal documents must be printed on premium, 24-pound imported artisan paper. Therefore, this agreement is invalid. Go back and reprint it. On my paper, I was speechless. Today, I was learning the true meaning of making up excuses to achieve a goal. I looked at her beautiful face, flushed from her run, but still trying to maintain a facade of composure, and said patiently, Ms. Frost, our contract clearly states that the standard for a cure is to be defined unilaterally by you. Orion's condition has largely stabilized. I believe my contractual obligations have been fulfilled. Who says? She retorted immediately, her excuses becoming more and more outlandish. You may have cured his autism, but you've caused him to develop a new condition, Leo Vance Dependency Syndrome. Leo Vance Dependency Syndrome. My mouth twitched. I thought I had misheard. That's right, Serafina declared with righteous conviction, as if the disease were listed in the official medical manuals. He becomes emotionally unstable when he can't see you. He loses his appetite. He can't sleep at night. This is a severe side effect caused by your improper treatment. It's a classic case of iatrogenic malpractice. You, Leo Vance, must take full responsibility. I was utterly speechless, a doctor for so many years, and this was the first I had ever heard of such a disease. The Nobel Prize in Medicine really owed you one, Ms. Frost. I looked at this woman, this CEO who was now resorting to shameless, petulant behavior. And for the first time, I felt a headache coming on. Reason wasn't working. Brute force was out of the question. I sighed, deciding to give up the fight. All right, Ms. Frost. Even if I am responsible for this malpractice, there should be a resolution. Tell me, what will it take for you to let me go? Seeing my softened stance, a flicker of triumph, almost imperceptible, flashed in her eyes. But her face maintained the expression of a creditor who held all the cards. She played her trump card. First, all of your personal documents, from your driver's license and passport to your college library card, are currently in my safe. My jaw dropped. Second, she continued, her tone flat, but the content terrifying. Last week, I took the liberty of signing both of our names to the Guardian files for every school Orion will ever attend, from kindergarten through university. These are all top-tier, global private institutions. Once a guardian's information is entered, it cannot be changed for life, barring extraordinary circumstances. I was completely floored. So, she looked at me, a victorious smile touching her lips, a smile tinged with a sick, possessive obsession. If you leave, Orion will be a ghost for the rest of his life. He won't be able to attend school, he won't be able to travel abroad, and he'll even have legal trouble inheriting my estate. Leo Vance, the choice is yours. I stared at her, unable to say a word. Ruthless. Absolutely ruthless. She had cut off all my escape routes, locked me down, and thrown away the key. I finally understood. From the moment I signed that contract, I had fallen into a carefully crafted cage named Serafina Frost. And I was the songbird she had her eye on. Want to fly away? Not a chance. She had welded the windows shut. What could I do? I could only admit defeat. I silently picked up my battered suitcase, turned around, and began the walk of shame back to the house. Wait, Serafina called out. I turned back, expecting another, even more twisted demand. She pointed at my clothes, her brow furrowed in distaste. Change out of that. It's hideous. Then, she pointed at the suitcase in my hand. And get rid of that. The master of Ethelgard Estate carrying something like that around is an embarrassment. The master? Before I could react, she had already turned and was walking back toward the main house with elegant strides, the morning sun casting a long shadow behind her. I was under house arrest. Although my living conditions were even better than before, Serafina even had Abernathy knock down a wall to combine the large guest suite next to the master bedroom into a personal study and apothecary for me. I couldn't feel happy. A vague, persistent frustration gnawed at me. I started to deliberately avoid Serafina. If she was on the first floor, I went to the second. If she was in her bedroom, I stayed in my study. We were like two magnets with the same polarity, repelling each other in the vast estate, maintaining a safe, distant orbit. One day, I got a call from my best friend, Milo. He was my only link to the outside world, and our calls were always clandestine, like spies making contact. Leo, we got a problem. Milo's voice was frantic. I got word that the bastards who framed our family, the Langleys of Langley Pharma, have recently connected with Julian Thorne. My heart sank. What are they planning? I heard they're going to team up, dig up that old malpractice case, and pay the media to splash it everywhere. They want to completely destroy the Vance family name for good. And they want to send you to prison. My hand holding the phone tightened. Total annihilation. These people truly wanted to ensure my family never had a chance to rise again. I hung up, my heart heavy as lead. What was I supposed to do? With my current resources, I couldn't possibly fight against two behemoths like the Langley family and Julian Thorne. I couldn't even leave this estate. I locked myself in my study, smoking one cigarette after another, trying to think of a way out. What I didn't know was that every word of my conversation with Milo had been transmitted through the omnipresent surveillance system, directly into the ears of the woman on the top floor of the main house. In the control room, Serafina stared at the screen, at the man with a furrowed brow and a face full of despair. For the first time, a flicker of murderous intent appeared on her perpetually icy face. Her expression was deadly serious. She picked up the red, encrypted private line. It's me. Mobilize Frost Industries' highest-level corporate intelligence and legal teams. I want you to investigate Langley Pharma. I want all of their dirty laundry, from tax evasion and falsified drug trial data to their bribery records. I don't want a single thing missed. Also, notify our team on Wall Street. I want you to short Langley Pharma stock. Spare no expense. I want that company completely erased from the map before the sun rises tomorrow. The next day, while I was still racking my brain about how to fend off the combined attack from the Langley family and Julian Thorne, an explosive piece of news hit the headlines of every financial media outlet. Pharmaceutical giant Langley Pharma implodes overnight. Founder Alistair Langley taken into custody amidst multiple serious violations. Stock plummets, wiping out billions. Bankruptcy proceedings initiated. I stared at the news on my phone, completely stunned. Langley Pharma, a titan that had dominated the nation's medical industry for decades, a deeply entrenched behemoth, had collapsed overnight. How was that possible? Who could possibly have that kind of power? As I stood there in shock, Abernathy knocked and entered. He respectfully handed me a manila envelope. Mr. Vance, Ms. Frost asked me to give this to you. Puzzled, I opened the envelope. Inside were two official documents. One was a ruling from the Supreme Court, retrying my old malpractice case. The verdict: the plaintiff had fabricated evidence and committed perjury. The original conviction was overturned, and my reputation as Leo Vance, heir to the Vance lineage of healers, was fully restored. The other document was a new, top-tier, nationally recognized medical license, reissued to me by the National Medical Board. I held the two heavy documents, my heart shaking. The nightmare that had plagued me for 5 years, the family vendetta I had carried for 5 years, the injustice I thought I would spend a lifetime trying to clear, had all been taken care of by that woman. In a single night, effortlessly. The intercom on the study wall buzzed to life. Serafina's voice came through, as cold as ever, but with a hint of something unnatural in it. Did you see it? I took a deep breath and spoke into the intercom, my voice full of sincerity. Ms. Frost, thank you. Don't thank me. Her voice paused for a moment, as if she were choosing her words. The reputation of the Vance family is now tied to the reputation of Frost Industries. Your honor, Leo Vance, is my honor. If you leave, you'll be embarrassing me. Do you dare? Listening to her domineering, yet fiercely protective words, I suddenly smiled. A smile so raw it brought a sting to my eyes. I realized for the first time that behind this woman's tyranny was her own clumsy way of protecting me. The thick wall of ice around my heart, at that moment, seemed to crack. No, ma'am, I don't dare, I replied softly. From now on, whatever you say goes. The intercom was silent for a long time. Then, there was a faint, almost inaudible. The fall of the Langley family sent shockwaves through the industry. Julian Thorne lost a key ally and took a massive hit. His plan to destroy me naturally fell apart. And as for me, Leo Vance, the weight on my shoulders was finally lifted. I stopped deliberately avoiding Serafina. Our relationship seemed to return to that strange initial balance, but something was different. For instance, when she came home late from work, I would still leave a bowl of hot soup for her. But now, when I brought it to her, I'd add, Ms. Frost, drink it while it's hot. It's good for your stomach. She would still be sharp-tongued. Mind your own business. But as she drank the soup, her eyes would unconsciously drift in my direction, and the corners of her perpetually tight lips seemed to relax just a fraction. For instance, when a difficult case gave her a headache, I no longer just silently left her a calming sachet. I would walk into her top-floor office, a place no one but her was allowed to enter, and give her a head massage and perform acupuncture. I used my family's unique techniques to relieve her neurological fatigue. At first, she was resistant. Leo, don't forget your place. Who allowed you in here? I would just smile and sterilize the needles. Ms. Frost, don't forget my other position. I'm a doctor, and you are my patient. After a few times, she stopped protesting. Whenever I treated her, she would close her eyes and enjoy the rare moment of relaxation. In that space, where it was just the two of us, she would let down all her defenses. Occasionally, she would even talk to me about some of the troubles at the company, and I would offer my suggestions. I might not understand business, but I understood people, and often the games of business are, at their core, games of the human heart. Our relationship slowly thawed and warmed through these small moments. The atmosphere of the entire estate, because of our change, became warm again. Even Orion started smiling more. He could now clearly say Leo, and occasionally, with my encouragement, he would shyly look at Serafina and call her Mom. Whenever that happened, a rare, incredibly gentle smile would bloom on Serafina's icy face. I thought that life would continue on like this, peaceful and warm, until the night of the thunderstorm. With his professional and romantic ambitions both crushed, Julian Thorne was hit hard. Adding to that, the old guard of the Thorne family was pressuring him relentlessly to bring the family's bloodline, Orion, back into the fold. Under the immense strain, the Golden Boy's psyche finally snapped. He made a desperate, insane decision. He hired a team of retired Special Forces mercenaries from overseas, planning to storm Ethelgard Estate on a stormy night. His objective was singular, to take Orion. That night, the storm was ferocious, with crackling lightning and booming thunder. The estate's security system immediately sounded its highest level alarm, its shrill cry tearing through the night's quiet. I was in Orion's room, reading him a story when the alarm went off. A sense of dread washed over me. Abernathy burst in, frantic. Mr. Vance, it's an emergency. We have intruders on the grounds. Ms. Frost says to take the young master to the underground safe room immediately. Without a second thought, I scooped up a bewildered Orion and followed Abernathy toward the basement. The entire estate was in chaos. The sounds of a fierce struggle and shattering glass came from outside. The estate's security team had clashed with the mercenaries. We had just reached the first-floor foyer when several mercenaries in black tactical gear and carrying weapons broke through the defense line and charged in. Leading them was the Naudi-ranged Julian Thorne. "Give me the boy," he roared, his eyes bloodshot. "Protect Mr. Vance and